So, at the end of our last podcast episode, we said that AI literacy is now a core professional skill.
Which sounds great, of course.
And then you open LinkedIn.
And suddenly it feels impossible.
But fortunately, it isn't impossible, but you do need a plan. So, welcome back to the Marketer's Guide to the AI Galaxy. We're now on season 4, episode 2.
Season 4 going strong. And last episode, we set up our core mission for this season because every season had a different theme. And that's about all about helping marketers, but also really anyone else who's interested go beyond understanding AI and understanding what AI literacy actually means in 26 and how it lives in the space between hype and fear.
And today we're going to talk about why that space is so hard to actually find.
Because building AI literacy, doesn't isn't just about AI, it's also about the environment that you're learning in.
So let's start with the obvious problem I think we've all recognized, and that is AI news overload.
And honestly, it's too much.
It is too much. I mean, every day we are seeing headlines about a new model, new features, new capability, a new panic, and a new think piece about the end of work, jobs being lost, or basically the end of the world with AI.
Yes, and I mean it's no longer contained because back when we started this, I remember we had to actively like seek out AI news, and it was
Yes.
actually sometimes challenging to find the latest developments of AI at the very beginning, because
Yes.
it's not just now it's no longer just in like the more techie publications. So like think TechCrunch, think the tech section of the Atlantic, because AI news is now everywhere. It's in media, it's in politics, education, entertainment, and of course marketing.
And podcast as well. Podcasts.
Yes, of course,
Definitely.
podcasts, not just this one, of course, but also AI companies themselves moving into this space. So, yeah, one of the things we want to talk about is how OpenAI recently bought TBPN, which is a tech talk show, with the goal of engaging the public more directly about AI.
Which, quite frankly, I didn't see that coming at all, but that is definitely a shift that signals something much broader
Yes, and I think you could say because basically the conversation around AI is becoming, an asset in its own right.
because so many people, they don't actually experience AI directly. They experience it through explanations, demos, headlines. So a lot of their AI experiences actually do come through or from the media.
Exactly. Yeah, they're not firsthand, like you're saying, they're from the media. So if you have the power to influence how technology is interpreted by people, you're reaching them in a way in this essential way when it comes to helping shape their relationship with AI. Because, so many people experience it secondhand rather than firsthand.
Exactly. And against all of this, there is one question that we keep hearing, which is we hear a lot when we speak at conferences, and is the question is people asking how they can keep up with AI news? Like, what is the best way to keep up with all of this?
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, it's hard, and it's something we loyal listeners will know. That's something we focused on back for season 2, which was all about explaining the implications of AI news and developments for marketers, both for the short term and the long term.
And we chose to pivot away from this for season 3 and focus on the bigger picture of AI myths and how we can bust them. Because analyzing the AI news and really separating the wheat from the chaff every week also sent us down a lot of dead ends. I think stories that were, say, big one week and then just ended, there was really no follow up.
Where'd they
And
go?
then we also took away from this that no one really has a complete picture of what's really going on, what's happening, what direction is AI really taking us.
Yeah, and I think so. And, not even the people building the models who are or involved in the companies. It turns out, I think all of it comes down to people are building their understanding of AI from fragments, from headlines, from LinkedIn hot takes, and demos, or whatever really just costs their other social feeds that day.
And this all leads to a very specific issue, which is false confidence. And this brings us back essentially to our last episode, episode 1 of this season, where we talked about the gap between people who understand AI and people who might not have that full grasp of it yet.
Yes, and then I think we also need to think about from that a third group, which is the people who believe they understand AI, but in actuality, it's only based on partial information.
And that group we see often holds influence inside organizations.
Yes, so these are, again, without wanting to overgeneralize, sometimes the people
Yeah.
who are making the decisions around which tools to get, they're the ones who set the company direction and their, or at least big teams' directions, and they're often the ones encouraging their teams to use AI more and KPIing them against AI usage.
Yes, and all of this often happens without really a clear sense of where it actually works.
Yeah, because and I think this comes on to another topic, which is the trust issue. Because even when you want to learn, the question is, where are you getting your learning from? What are their what are their biases? How does it come together?
Exactly. So you got models that hallucinate, content that looks real but isn't, people presenting AI generated work as expertise and they call themselves as AI experts.
Yes, and of course, yeah, as you're saying, then you've got the companies who at times are moving pretty quickly and sometimes ahead of their own guardrails or ahead even of their own internal AI policies. Combined with this is definitely also this growing effort to shape how AI is being discussed publicly.
Yes. So, with all of this in mind, this really leaves people in a constant state of low level uncertainty where they don't know who to trust, they don't know what to trust, or what's even real. And that's why we were so focused on AI myth busting for our last season.
Yes, and it's still a big focus of what we do because I think, myth busting is part of the, AI myth busting, I'd still say is a core foundation of building AI literacy and sharpening it. Because to
Absolutely.
make all of this, to complicate all of this, the models themselves are still also wrong because end of last year, I think we both discussed it on our socials, that BBC and EBU study that said around 45% of AI news queries across major systems contain significant errors.
Oof.
And then
Oof.
only last month, a Washington State University study found that ChatGPT is frequently getting the facts wrong when it's tested on scientific hypotheses and easily contradicts itself when it's asked the same question more than once.
Like, those stats are alarming. But so, even on topics where people assume that the model sounds informed and where it should be able to draw from actual information, the actual reliability can be pretty shaky.
Yes, and that's important because again comes to this thing that people mistake an articulate answer, which LLMs are great at providing for an accurate one. If it sounds polished, I feel like maybe it's also just human instinct to some degree, but people will if it sounds polished, people will assume it's right.
Exactly. If it sounds confident, then, why question why question it? But I think that's where it gets more worrying because when people don't just notice that the mistakes and move on, they often follow the model anyway, even sometimes against their own better judgment.
Yes, and this is I mean, actually, we have part of the conversation that inspired this episode, us sending news articles to each other
Yeah.
over the last days or so, because all the research on what I think that researchers are calling cognitive surrender, where people
Mhm.
who are using ChatGPT and ilk and still follow its advice, including when they are pretty sure that the advice is wrong. Because what means is that we're dealing with a system that sounds like it has authority, combined with users who, in some cases, are very ready and willing to hand over their judgment.
So to recap, what's happening is the issue is that both LLMs make mistakes and people that are willing and also the people that are willing to trust them through those mistakes. They're willing to overlook them.
Yes, and that is again, why AI literacy matters so much because without it, people are either going to overtrust the system, overreact to the hype, or some little combination of both, and neither of those positions helps. And I think if we wanted to get to why this matters for marketers and what can now that we've defined the problem, what can we do about it? Yeah, things get real very quickly because so much of our job relies on decision making under uncertainty. It's making educated guesses based on hypotheses, but there's almost always a little bit of a leap of faith because there are several ways that marketing campaigns can be run. And you can't, I mean, fortunately, we seem to be hopefully past the days of every campaign needing to go viral. But there's always a bit of a leap of faith as to whether a campaign is going to hit or ideally exceed the KPIs.
Exactly. And with the AI, Definitely you can generate near infinite number of outputs, but of course of varying quality.
Yeah, so I think AI literacy, because there's so many ways to define it, but I think one way yeah, we're defining it is also as a filter because AI literacy is how you can tell if AI actually improves the work or if it
Mhm.
just accelerates mediocre work and lets you create more of it. But again, then you need to think about for why. Yeah, what's the point?
Exactly. So if keeping up is impossible, I mean, especially with the amount of AI news out there, then we feel that we need a new goal. And it's really ultimately understanding the shape of the space.
Yeah, so I think that involves things like what these systems do well, where do they break, how they tend to fail. So instead of having to yeah, rediscover and relearn the news and AI landscape every day, it's really about having these frameworks in place so that when something new appears, you, our audience, are in a better place to be able to, yeah, put it in the right category.
Exactly. So, meaning that you don't have to react to every headline. So, we basically we want everyone to ask the question. The question really shifts from what happened in AI in AI this week or this month to
Yeah, or even AI this year to what do I
this year.
really need to understand to make better decisions?
Exactly. So basically, it's really about moving away from being reactive and knowing how to be more selective. So seeing it from a different lens, rather.
Yes. Yeah, and I think, yeah, just as we one thing I think that's also really important to touch on as part of this episode is the question of the AI bubble, because I think for me, that's one really concrete example of, yeah, being able to filter and understand news. Because I feel like for at least the last year, there's been this constant conversation about how the AI bubble is about to burst.
Exactly, and I think it's worth just getting into that, somewhat. First of all, what do people actually mean when they say AI bubble? I mean, do they see it from a financial perspective, like all these stocks into AI companies, they're about to fall, like the share price or something like that? But at a basic level, they're talking about that potential market bubble, a situation meaning that investments, valuations, and expectations, they've run ahead of the real returns.
Yeah, and then definitely there are a few reasons why people think that all of this might be happening. And one is just the sheer scale of AI investments. So just the hundreds of billions or trillions even going into AI infrastructure. So from the data centers, chips, the computers themselves.
And it's worth mentioning that investment tends to be very highly concentrated.
Yeah, so we've got a small number of companies and they're driving a disproportionate share of market growth, which I mean, again, we've seen those diagrams of like the economy consists of seven companies. Because yeah, I mean, at one point, AI related companies accounted for the vast majority of gains in the US stock market.
That's crazy. And then there's the return question, right?
Yeah, because and again, this is something that we've even last year we were talking about a lot, which is essentially that despite the massive spending, many organizations still aren't seeing meaningful results. I know last year one of the big ones was it Harvard School of Business study around how 95% of AI
Oh,
projects just
yes.
haven't come to fruition, which we talked about a lot. So,
Yeah.
which actually I think prompted us the theme for this season to some degrees. We've talked before about those estimates that suggest that the AI investments aren't generating returns.
So expectations are running ahead of outcomes.
And also the structure of the investment itself, because, yeah, as mentioned before, some of the analysts talk about those circular flows of capital in the AI ecosystem.
Meaning that companies are investing in each other and buying each other's infrastructure.
And then, which then reinforces the growth signals and the valuations in a relatively closed loop.
And then there's the cost.
And yeah, and like, yeah, with all of this, there are huge costs. So the training the models is expensive, running them is expensive, proving is expensive, and that's just financial costs because, yeah, not to go into the whole environmental side of it all, which is also huge and something we, yeah, we'll definitely need to unpack as well.
Yeah.
And the whole dynamic, but basically, it's a whole dynamic where incremental improvements just require a disproportionate amount of energy and capital.
Exactly. And it starts to resemble previous tech cycles.
Yeah, which in turn is then why people compare it to, yeah, back in the days of the dot-com bubble.
But there is an agreement on that.
No. And this is again part of it because part of it is the fact that a lot of the AI bubble chat seems to be perspectives and opinions because what we can see is that current AI leaders have real revenue, real products, and yeah, they are deeply integrated into the economy. As we said before, like regardless of how you feel about AI, like AI is here to stay. It's not like should we AI, shouldn't we AI, it's how should we with AI because it's
Yeah,
infrastructure, it's
exactly.
not speculation.
So all of this leaves us in uncertainty because regardless of how you label the market of what is happening, AI is already embedded in products, workflows, industries.
Yeah, so even if there was some kind of major course correction, it would be more about resetting expectations, so like shifting investments, removing weaker players, and that's
Right.
a pattern I think that we've seen before with major technology.
So in all of this, this actually connects and relates back to our main theme of literacy.
Yes, because I think one thing is that if your whole approach around to AI or a big part of your approach around AI is waiting for clarity, waiting for certainty, you are delaying the moment where you actually build understanding.
Exactly. Yep.
And I think just, yeah, as a final note, we've been deeply invested in getting season 4 underway since there's no better time to get deeper into functional AI literacy. And if episode 1 was about why literacy matters
This episode explains why it is so difficult to build.
and why the environment itself contributes to that difficulty.
So next episode, which we're really excited about, we're going to actually shift our perspective,
And we're going to look at some cases where AI is actually working.
and we're talking about real applications with real constraints. So watch out for this space. But until next time.
Until next time, thanks for listening.